Hey Stats class, this is Mr. Blevins. I'm going to do a little recap of our discussion on that intro to Excel. So I got an Excel spreadsheet open, and typically your cells aren't going to be this large. I just made them a little bigger so you can see them in the video. But it's fine to use the default screen, and then we'll talk about adjusting the size in a little bit here. We talked about how if you want to do math in Excel, you can't just type in the math you want to do. You have to get Excel to go into its math mode, and you do that by hitting an equal sign first. So you put an equal sign in there, and now Excel can do math. Okay, it'll give you a summary of what we did up here in this FX tab, and if you got the equal sign there, it'll actually do the math that you have in the cell. If you have multiple operations, so like we did 1 plus 4, that's 5, but if I do times 2, well, now order of operations says, do the multiplication first. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. It'll do the correct order of operations. It doesn't do it left to right. Notice 1 plus 4 would be 5, times 2 would be 10. So if it didn't do the correct order of operations, we'd get a different number here. But it does. And it does the order of operations correctly. So you use Excel to answer those questions on Facebook and Twitter and all that stump people, and people argue for hours and hours and days about what the correct answer is. Excel can answer that for you. But one of the big benefits of Excel, it does have a numbering system going on over here. But if you wanted to, if you needed like a count in a data set that you're going to actually use, you can't actually use these numbers over to the side. But if you want to put them in a cell so you can use them, again, we talked about this in class, that if you type in numbers and Excel will pick up a pattern, it will extend the pattern on down through there. So same thing we taught. I gave you an example of doing the odd numbers. It picks up a pattern and it continues on with that pattern. All right. It will not pick up certain patterns. I didn't go into detail about all the patterns, but like if I'm doubling, I'm doubling the numbers. So I'll double 1, I got 2, I double 2, I got 4. The next number should be 8. It doesn't pick up that pattern. So the more sophisticated the pattern, the more operations. If it's not just simply adding something, then it doesn't understand. So, or it won't necessarily be able to pick it up. So sometimes you have to define the pattern. So we talked about that we can do the dragging technique. We can drag things down. So if I wanted to do that pattern, so what I'm doing is I'm doubling every time. I could come back up here to the top and say this new cell is equal 2 times the previous cell, and I just have to click that previous cell, and then I could drag that down and it would understand and it would do it. Okay, so we have to be careful with just dragging things down and think Excel is going to know what I'm talking about. It can do basic stuff if it's like adding 1, adding 2, like it was for those examples where it's just the numbers 1 through 10, or if it's the odd numbers. But if it's some other kind of more sophisticated pattern going on between, sometimes we have to define it ourselves in there. All right, so let's say that I have that salary plan that we were talking about. Oops. So again, I got a pattern. I'm going to extend it all the way down, and if you scroll down, it'll start to go fast. So I want it to go from 0 to 30. And we talked about that this company, or this particular place, wants to start out their employees with no years experience at 40,000, and they say that they're going to give a 1.63% raise every year. So this is our multiplying factor. So what's going on is that after every year they're going to get this raise. So we're going to start off, we're going to take the previous year and we're going to multiply it by this raise percentage. Okay, now what I did in class is I used a power over here, and that the error was this is the raise. So I am multiplying it right here. So when I go down and I do it again, it's already been multiplied here once, and so if when I multiply by it again here, and I click this number times that, it was multiplied, the 40,000 was multiplied by this number once here, and now it's being multiplied again. It's already built in to this one, and now it's being multiplied again, so I don't need to do the power on this. That's why I was getting the weird numbers last time. Alright, so again, if I want to be able to drag, again, if I try to drag from here, it's going to give me zeros because there's nothing underneath here. And notice the number that I'm multiplying by is in D1, and when I drag down, it makes it go to D2, where there's nothing there. And then down here, it's D3, there's nothing there. So again, what we have to do is when we tell it to multiply by this number, when we click that cell, if you have an F4 key on your keyboard, you can click that and lock it in. If you don't, you just need to draw in those dollar signs around the letter, and it'll lock that value in. And now I can double click, and so there's that salary plan. Remember, we talked about in class they wanted to stay below 60. So they didn't do that. They missed it pretty significantly there at the back end. So they wanted it to be still below 60 here, and it's well above 60. All right. The way that they wanted to do this gap right here is basically what they wanted. So if you look at what's going on right here, this difference between these two numbers is what they wanted to add every year. Okay, so it would have been the same thing. I'm going to write it over here to the side. It would have been the same thing that first year. And you're going to lock that in. So they want to add that same value every year. And you can see if they would have done that, they would have stayed under 60 like they wanted to. Okay, but they didn't. I'm going to insert. And I want you to see the discrepancy. So there's not going to be any discrepancy in these first two fields. But for the rest of them, it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you add this whole column up, notice it's got a blue. It's all highlighted, so that means all the data is highlighted. Now I can just come up here and click the sum button, and it will add all these numbers together. And if I do that, I get this. This is how much money they would lose by paying them what they legally wrote in their policy and procedures to what they wanted to pay. So that's how much money they would lose for every single employee that they had over the lifetime of that employee. And if they have, 200 employees, that's a big chunk of money that they would lose over that. And you divide that by, this is a 30-year period, you divide that by 30 years, they're losing on average $358,000 per year. Now that's going to be a much higher on the upper end than it is the lower end, early on, but still, the way we word things matters. Okay. Now I wanted you to see this is with Excel. That's a lot of calculations, and if I'm having to go in here and do every single cell and do the calculation in every single cell, that would take a long time. So I just wanted you to see some of the functionality of Excel. I'm going to make more of these as the semester goes on, detailing specific values, specific operations that we do, so you can see it. But I just wanted you to see the clicking and dragging feature that Excel offers.